I have for you today the text of this extraordinary rant sent by Donald Trump to Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre. A message that ransoms the security of the world over a temper tantrum due to lust for an undeserved prize. For weeks, Donald Trump's obsession with complete and total control of Greenland, his words, was framed by the White House as a strategic necessity. But a text message sent this past Sunday and confirmed yesterday by Prime Minister Støre reveals a far more narcissistic motive. So Trump sends this guy a text message, but in Norway they have a functional government, and so there was a freedom of information, their equivalent of what we have in the U.S., which is a freedom of information request, meaning that a citizen or journalist or whoever can petition the government to release documents, and as long as those documents are not classified like national security or maybe somebody's personal human resources information, they release it. So that's how this message from Trump has now gotten out into the public. And in this message, Trump explicitly links his dangerous tantrum to his failure to win the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, first, there's this factual delusion. Trump claims to have stopped 8 wars plus, his words. As CBS News, the Associated Press, and non-lunatics everywhere can tell you, there's no reasonable metric by which this is true. So Trump claims that he stopped conflicts between Cambodia and Thailand, between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This toddler president is operating in a psychotic, delusional fantasy world where he's the world's arbiter of peace. Then there's the fundamental ignorance of governance. Despite Støre repeatedly explaining that the Nobel Committee is an independent body, Trump continues to blame the Norwegian government. My wife is a licensed psychologist, and in her profession, they call this narcissistic injury. The inability to process a rejection as anything other than a targeted conspiratorial slight from the highest levels. So the Nobel Prizes, and there's the Peace Prize, but you have the Nobel Prize in the sciences like physics and chemistry, and then later on, the Nobel Prize in economics came about. And so this guy, Alfred Nobel, he was a Swede. He wasn't even from Norway. He was from Sweden, from Stockholm. He was a scientist and an industrialist. He had 355 patents. And one of his most famous inventions was dynamite. So nitroglycerin is an explosive, and you take nitric acid and you inject it, or you basically combine it with glycerin. And then so when you do that, you have to combine it to create the nitroglycerin molecule at high pressure. And now you have all this energy stored in those nitrogen bonds. When you break them, they go boom. The problem is nitroglycerin is super highly unstable, and you can look at it wrong, as they say, and it'll blow up, or it can get too hot, or you can shake it or smack it and it'll blow up. But he figured out that you could, if you it can be liquid, and you can put it into something like diatomaceous earth, which comes from out of the ocean, where you have the diatoms, which are these little sea creatures, and when they die, they're hard shell little wee beasties, and so when they die, their skeletons, their external skeletons, float down to the bottom of the sea and form like a muck. And you can take this muck out, and made up of these old little creature skeletons, and if you dry it out, and then you put the nitroglycerin liquid in it, then it becomes stable, and you can pack that, and that becomes dynamite. So he invented this, and this was important because you'd have these dynamite factories, and they would blow up because nitroglycerin, you had these nitroglycerin factories, and they would blow up until he figured out how to stabilize nitroglycerin by making dynamite. And so When he died in 1896, he died in Italy, but he set up this foundation back in Sweden, or he left almost his entire estate and his entire fortune to fund the Nobel Prizes. And they've been given out. So there's an independent committee. They're not given out by not the Swedish government, certainly not the Norwegian government, but the toddler president Stu does not have the intellectual capacity to understand this. And so anyway, they've been given out every year since like the 1800s, and that's the Nobel Prizes. And so you have, most of them are for science, and you have economics. Now there's also one for literature, and then you have the Nobel Peace Prize for somebody who has, hopefully promoted peace in the world. Most recently, Maria Corina Machado got it, the Venezuelan democracy activist who is fighting for democracy in her own country. But getting back to the point, so Trump's mad at Norway and Denmark, I guess. I guess because they're all Scandinavian countries. So you have Norway and Denmark and Sweden. And I suppose you could include Finland in there as well. I don't know if ethnographically Finland is a Norwegian country, but they're all, or no, it's Norwegian. Is it Norwegian but not Scandinavian? Anyway, no reasonable person, including, or least of all, the Nobel Committee, would think that this toddler president's recent actions merit such an accolade. Last week, we saw the bizarre spectacle of Trump accepting the Nobel medal from Maria Corina Machado, who I mentioned, the Venezuelan activist who just won it, which pissed off Trump because he wanted it for himself. And she's just trying to do anything she can to rescue her country. But the Nobel Committee also clarified that if she, let's say, so she won the prize, and then if she gives it away or pawns it, like you hear about these Olympic athletes who pawn their medal, well, they're still the gold medalist or the silver medalist or whatever medal they won. Or you hear maybe about an actor who pawns or sells or auctions off his or her Emmy Award or Grammy Award or Oscar or something like that. But just whoever has the physical possession of this is not necessarily, that they don't become the winner. If you give me an Oscar award, that doesn't make me a great actor. But anyway, we have, some people don't think like with brains. But Trump then challenges Denmark's right of ownership over Greenland, arguing that because a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, it doesn't count, especially since we had boats landing there also. And he actually says this. This "I want it, therefore it's mine" logic is something that most of us outgrow by the time we get to elementary school. When a foreign policy is dictated by the pursuit of a plaque, a trophy to put in your case, the world becomes, or has become, a much more dangerous place. We're no longer debating the Arctic's strategic value. We're witnessing a global security crisis born out of one man's mentally ill need for validation. So let's analyze this text message. It goes, "Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus," Norway doesn't give out the Nobel Peace Prize, but you don't even need to have a lot of intelligence to understand that. But if you're dumb enough, I suppose you can not comprehend that. "I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America." So let's think about that. He's saying because he didn't get this prize, he can now think about what's good and proper for the United States of America. So before he wasn't thinking about what was good and proper for the United States of America, according to his own logic here. So I am fascinated. I understand, I suppose, why some people voted for this guy, but what amazes me now is those people who continue to support and put their faith in someone who is able to write these words. I continue. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China, and why do they have a right of ownership anyway? So Russia is not threatening Greenland. China is not threatening Greenland. Trump's threatening Greenland. So protect the land from Russia or China. They're trying to protect it from you. I continue. There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. Okay. I continue. I have done more for NATO than any other person since its founding. Wrong. And now NATO should do something for the United States. I mean, it's psychotic delusion. When my wife was in college and she was studying to be a psychologist, I would read all her homework and textbooks. And of course, that doesn't make me a psychologist, but this is a psychotic delusion. Continuing. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you, President DJT. The world is not secure as long as you're in the White House. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with me? Do I have it all wrong? Let me know. If you're here on YouTube, please give me a like and subscribe. And if you're listening here via podcast, a 5-star review will help spread the word. I'm Lauren Moss, and this is E Pluribus Unum, and be sure to share with friends. Let's help get the word out there, and maybe the algorithm will notice us, and we can go viral, as they say. Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon. E Pluribus Unum. With Lauren Moss Unum. With Lauren Moss Unum. E Pluribus Unum.